Hi everyone, welcome to Readings with Sam. Remember to like and subscribe this video so you can stay updated on all the amazing energy readings that are coming up for all of you. Whenever you're watching this is when you need to hear it most, so even though I read on daily energies, if you're watching this tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, you are meant to hear this message when you needed it most. These readings are collective readings, so they kind of apply to everyone collectively who is watching these videos, so that's why I give a lot of different interpretations. So really go with the interpretation that resonates with you. Use your intuition. There may be videos where you watch the whole thing and you're like, oh my god, this is everything that's going on in my life. And there may be videos that you watch and you're like, honestly, none of this really resonates, but ooh, that one thing she said is what I needed to watch this for. So always use your own discernment, always use your own intuition. You know yourself the best, and this is just to help guide you to the highest alignment of yourself. So take what resonates and leave the rest. Today is Thursday, July 14, 2022. It is the day after a full moon, so if you didn't do a full moon ritual, you can still do it today and tomorrow. And today we are pulling from the Dharma deck, and this deck actually does not have an author written on it, and it doesn't have a photographer. All I know is that it's by Mandala Publishing, so I will put that. So when this deck comes out, ooh, heavy on the spiritual lessons, so heavy on the spiritual lessons. Dharma is truth. It's truth within truth. It's the truth within the truth within the truth within the truths, right? It's just truth. So when the Dharma cards come out, the spirits really are asking us to remove ourselves from being too entrapped in like the earthly realm and in being human, right? We are human, so we always have to come back to our body, come back to center, come back to earth to really be fully actualized. But sometimes being human can really sometimes being human can be really difficult and can kind of suck us away from all of the amazing spiritual stuff that's going on in the ethers. And sometimes we can forget that, you know, challenges are lessons, or that emotions are just waves, right? So this is why, even though it's very important to love yourself as a human, it's also important to not forget that you are also a soul and a spirit and can transcend all of space and time. So let's go into the reading here. Okay, so that shuffle was very all over the place, so there's a lot of messages that want to come out all at once. I kind of reshuffled it and centered it to something that can apply to everyone's issues right now, and this makes a lot of sense. The main energies overall today are impediments. Okay, so I want to read what's on the back of this card. 6 things will block spiritual progress: eating or accumulating too much, working too hard for mundane rewards, speaking of useless things, following a spiritual path without understanding it or not following one at all, keeping worldly company, and being greedy for wealth and recognition. So the energy overall today is very straightforward in a lot of ways, but it's mostly if you are really struggling right now and you really feel like you're just going through it and you feel like there's a lot of blocks, you feel like there's a lot of mental blocks, you feel like your goals just aren't really coming into fruition, or even if you are on the spiritual path and you are really tapped into that spiritual journey, and you feel like you're kind of just hitting roadblock after roadblock and you're kind of just hitting your head against the wall and really feel like you can't really move forward. Today is to really honestly look at the way you may be impeding on your own efforts with these 6 things. I'm going to go through these 6 impediments. Some of them may apply to you, some of them may not. Some of them may apply to you right now in your life, and some of them may not apply to you right now in your life. And I would say really just do a check-in. The first thing that can block your spiritual progress is eating or accumulating too much. And I actually really love this. I remember Sadhguru said this, and someone asked a question, you know, if we want to be spiritual, do we have to be vegetarian or vegan or anything like that? Which is a really honest question. And he just said, it doesn't matter what you eat, because every single thing that you eat, you are killing. You're still killing the plant. You're still killing the seeds. You're still killing something, right? So it's really not about what you eat, but about how much you eat. So this is specifically talking about greed, and we talk about greed again with greed for wealth and recognition. But with the eating and accumulating too much, it's hoarding. It's having too much of one thing, and it doesn't matter how good the thing is, right? It also really allows there to be some grace and allowance to be human. For example, and I personally speak about this because I am someone that physically falls ill if I do not eat meat, unfortunately. And I have had to deal with a lot of guilt on kind of like coming to terms with that. And when I read things like this, where it doesn't say eating meat or doing this or doing that specifically is bad for you, it allows for liberation from guilt and shame. So with this one in particular, really ask yourself if you're doing anything that's supposed to be good and supposed to help you on your spiritual path and supposed to help you in life, but it just makes you feel really guilty, or it makes you feel very shameful, or it just makes you feel bad, right? Because then it's inherently not good for you, you know? And so also that's the same thing with accumulating too much. Even though it makes us feel good to have a lot of things and to buy stuff and to fill our lives with all of like nice clothes or nice food or nice whatever or nice drink or anything like that, if it's too much, you don't leave room to actually breathe. And you are really just grasping at things to fill some sort of hole inside of you that actually needs to be filled through self-love, right? So there's that. Moving on to the next one, we have working too hard for mundane rewards. We talked about this yesterday directly. This literally translates to when people say, do less, do the least, right? It's literally like you're doing just too much, and for what? What's the point, right? Really make sure that you are just not slaving away or working really hard for just nothing, because you're going to burn yourself out. And if that one really resonates with you, I suggest watching the video from yesterday. Speaking of useless things is conversations that just don't go anywhere and just don't benefit anyone. So something that pops into my head is classic conversations of like complaining about the world. In particular, conversations that lead more towards nihilism and like, oh, like we're fucked or whatever the fuck. Because what's the point of that? You're not actually talking about anything. You're just you're just reinstating that the world is in a bad place, but not actually doing anything to help it, right? So it's kind of telling you, have useful conversations, have productive conversations. And it could be a conversation about nothing, but as long as it's positive, as long as it fills you up, as long as it makes you happy, then it's a productive conversation. But if you're talking to people and it literally makes you just feel drained, or it's just another sob story or a Greek tragedy, and you're just like, oh my God, like I'm here for you, but damn, like these are the conversations where it's like, make sure that this is also not draining you and taking you away from what's important in life. This next one, following a spiritual path without understanding it or not following one at all. This is a big one. Now, I'm assuming if you are watching this video, you are not an atheist. And I'm not saying anything bad against atheists. More so what I'm saying is, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you follow some sort of spiritual path or believe in spirit. And this is actually something that I've read a few times, especially in this new age world where we're really moving out of the idea of like, you must be one religion and all this stuff, and you can kind of make your own thing. And at least in Buddhism, it is just highly recommended that you pick one religion to be your base religion, or spiritual system, I should say. And it doesn't mean that you can't do all the other things, but you at least have one that you really, really have deeply studied, and you really are like, no, I actually understand the teachings of this one path, right? So that way, when you go out to other paths and experiment, you have a landing point, you still have a reference point to come back to. Well, and this is why it's important to follow a spiritual path with understanding it, because if you don't understand a spiritual path and you're kind of just doing it willy-nilly, it's not integrating. You know, it's the same thing as like reading a book on hiking, but then you never ever have actually gone on a hike in your real life, and then you try and give advice on hiking to hikers, and then you realize that like you don't even know what you're talking about because you never even have done it, right? So it's kind of the same thing, is make sure that if you're on the spiritual path, it's just recommended to pick one to study very deeply. And especially if you are someone that chooses to study a lot of spiritual paths. And of course, not following one at all, I'm going to leave that to popular opinion. I personally believe that it's a lot more beneficial to have a spiritual path to follow on. I think that it's inherent in human nature, but if you don't agree with me, that's fine. The next one, keeping worldly company. How I'm going to interpret this is basically when we keep too much worldly company, we're just spread too thin, you know? And I will be honest, I am someone that has a lot of friends and I love all of my friends, but are there times where I realize that I have spent all day talking to friends that didn't spend really much time focused on myself? Oh, totally. Do I hate those days? No. But do those days happen to me a lot? Kind of. And it's something that does impede the spiritual progress because you're not focusing on yourself, right? So with keeping worldly company, it's not saying, at least in my opinion, it doesn't mean, you know, become a recluse and become a hermit and don't talk to anyone, because, I mean, unless that is the path that you're being called to, right? But in general, it just means trim the fat. You know, if you are someone that constantly is talking to people, constantly on the phone, constantly texting, constantly in your DMs, constant with other people all the time, of course that's going to hinder your spiritual path. And of course that's going to hinder your goals because you're not focusing on yourself. You're dealing with all these other people, right? So pick your main ones, the ones that you really love, the ones that you really are like, this is my soul family, these are my people. And everyone else, of course, be kind and be there for others, but, you know, make sure that you're not spending your whole life on other people. And of course, lastly, being greedy for wealth and recognition, that's kind of a given. You know, we all need money and we all want to be honored for our work, but only striving for money and only striving for the public to love you, yeah, that's an ego issue. that's a little bit of a closed heart chakra issue, so definitely something to check in and look at if that is something that you really feel like you are craving that and needing that and doing things that may not be in your highest alignment to get that, right? So that's like the main energy of the day. I know this is kind of a long one, but there's a lot of points. It's really like, look at all these points, really check in with self. And I would say with this one, really check in with self for each one individually, because there may be one on here where like, oh yeah, that's the one. That's definitely the one that's messing me up. But there may be an undercover one too, right? So, yes, so now some advice on how to move through this energy, because it is a very intense energy to have to be like, okay, what are the things that I'm doing that are causing my own suffering? The advice, the mind. For one who has controlled the mind, it is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, it remains the greatest enemy. Now, let me tell you all how much I am someone that just does not believe in trusting your logic and your mind on certain things. I think it's a very valuable tool, but the lies we can tell ourselves, oh, it's wild, okay? It is wild. So with this card being the advice, it's really asking yourself to get a grip on your own mind, your own thoughts, what's going on in there, you know? And if you're someone, and you know, this is really something where if you are someone who tells themselves certain things, like, oh, I just get distracted really easily, or, oh yeah, like I'm all over the place, or, oh, like I'm just lazy, or, oh yeah, like, you know, whatever it is, these are all illusions and lies you're telling yourself. And I really hate to get into this, but you know, if you do have a mental health diagnosis as well, be sure that you're not wrapping your identity to that diagnosis, if that makes sense, right? Honor it, that it's real and that it's there, but you are not that. Okay. And even though medications do help, doing the inner work and really working on unraveling what's really going on there and really working on things like journaling and yoga and meditation, these things have shown us that they literally change the chemical imbalances in our brain to come back to neutral, right? So it's kind of like, be sure that you are also taking the steps to heal your own mind. Now, aside from that, if you are just anyone in the world, our minds are going crazy all the time, and just be sure that you're not lying to yourself, that you're not making up excuses for yourself, that you aren't holding yourself back, right? That you're not telling yourself, oh, I know that I do one of these things, but it's not that bad, you know? Things like that. Really get honest with yourself and really, really question your own mind and your own thoughts and your own beliefs about yourself. So this is also kind of what the card is saying, is that once you get a grip on your mind and get a grip of like, oh, okay, like I do this when actually this emotion's triggered, or like you just really understand yourself and you really get that high level of self-awareness, your mind and you can be best as friends, right? But if you're someone where you're just crippled with depression or anxiety or worry or fear or whatever it is, or low self-worth, and you just feel like you're at the throes of life, then yeah, your mind is always going to be such a battle. And also, this is not going to take a day. Like, you know, if you guys have been watching me for a while, y'all know that I have dealt with a laundry list of mental health issues, and it has taken me daily, multiple times a day recommitments to focus on self-awareness and healing myself and healing all the crazies, right? And basically the spirits are saying, you know, this is a good time to look at that, especially if you feel like this is a very stressful time in your life, especially if you feel like you are not in control of your life and you feel at the throes of other people or fate or anything like that. This is a very important message. So yeah, this was a long one and very intense. So hopefully something in there resonates. And yes. So I would say today, really great day again to look at these impediments. Each one, even if you feel like everything's great, this is a really great thing to just check in. Be like, okay, where am I at? And just be mindful of your mind, and be mindful that your mind may play some tricks on you or try and convince you of things that aren't in your highest alignment. And that's just the ego trying to keep you safe. It's not a bad part of you. But the spirits are here to basically tell you, hey, it's time to level up. You know, we just released all this stuff at the full moon. Let's go. Let's get it. So I hope you all have a beautiful day today, and I will see you all tomorrow.